So it's a bizarre Sunday. And I think the easiest way for me to sum up Sunday is that there's just nobody in this league good enough to overcome key injuries. And now we're in late November, and we're seeing key injuries. I mean, Dallas, you got your two best receivers are gone, your left tackle's gone, your two best pass rushers, Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence, gone. Well, what are you going to be? I mean, what really is Dallas? When Dallas is missing 4 of their top 8 players in Arrowhead against now a healthier Kansas City team, my takeaway was they were competitive. Mike McCarthy's clock management is a head scratcher, but I thought the Cowboys were competitive. But if you're wondering why they struggled offensively, when do they win without Tyron Smith and Amari Cooper in the lineup? In the last 3 years, they don't. Buffalo can't run the ball. Well, they're not good enough to win games if they don't run the football. Well, what about the Seahawks? Well, we know their offensive line is suboptimal. We know Russell Wilson's not healthy, and we know Pete Carroll's concepts are outdated. You just start looking around this league. The last 2 weeks, Tom Brady struggled. Why? Doesn't have Gronk and AB. Nobody in this league. Tennessee, Tannehill had 4 picks. Why? He's missing Derrick Henry. And now all these coordinators can see what he can't do without Derrick Henry. This league right now has no 10s. Detroit's a 1 to a 0, 1 through 10. There are no 10s. There's a couple of 8s. But now the Rams don't have Robert Woods. Do you think that's a uniquely gifted team? I do not. I think they're thin at wide receiver now. So my takeaway on this Sunday was don't get too worked up. Parity drives this sport. It's not college football. There's about 8 teams I think can win the Super Bowl. I thought that a month ago. I think it now, and it's mostly the same teams. I want to talk about Arizona-Seattle. It'd be easy to lament the Seahawks. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and for years I've been bagging on Pete Carroll and the house of cards this is. But I'd rather give Arizona credit. Cliff Kingsbury would be my coach of the year. I think it's really interesting that it always helps when you're backup. There's a certain symmetry with your starter and your backup. You saw that with the Ravens this weekend. The backup was like a poor man's Lamar Jackson. And Colt McCoy has been around the league for a long time. He's mobile. But when you watch the Arizona Cardinals with a backup quarterback going to San Francisco and Seattle, my takeaway is they're not as dynamic, but they look really, really organized and well coached. They've had injuries. They've lost J.J. Watt. They bring in Zach Ertz. They've had a ton of moving parts. And I think it's fascinating that the 2 teams in this league over the last 5 to 6 weeks that I think are the most consistent performers are the New England Patriots with a rookie quarterback and the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals have had a backup for 3 straight weeks, 2 road division games, and they're 2-1. That is not easy to do. And when you watch them play 2 of those games, Niners and Seahawks, they didn't look as dynamic. They looked fairly seamless. They added Zach Ertz. Doesn't seem to be a problem. I really like what I see with the Cardinals. The team that's not in the playoffs as of now, but feels like a playoff team to me is the Minnesota Vikings. And you know, I had picked them to upset almost the exact score. I picked them to upset the Packers. But do you know Minnesota is the only team in the league that has led every team they've played by at least 7 points? I almost feel like when I watch Kirk Cousins play, I always feel like he's, you know, when they talk about like a median home price in a community, that means half the prices of the homes are higher than that and half are lower. I feel like he's the median quarterback in the NFL. If you're not as good as Kirk, you have to draft another quarterback or acquire one. To be a Super Bowl team, you have to be better than Kirk Cousins. But he is good enough, and this really symbolizes the Vikings. They're good enough to beat anybody, but not good enough to beat anybody by a large margin. So their margins are so thin, that's why they're in all these close games. And whenever you hear that term, the median house price, That's my way of describing Kirk Cousins. I believe half the quarterbacks in the league are worse, half are better. But I think it's a fairly well-run operation, and I watched him play the Packers. Kirk Cousins now is 4-3-1 against Aaron Rodgers. There's something there on Minnesota. I think Minnesota's going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to win a playoff game. I think Mike Zimmer's perhaps the most underrated coach in the league. And I feel like the Vikings are the Colts of the NFC. And I want to go talk about the Colts because they hammered the Buffalo Bills. And I feel the exact same way with the Colts. They can beat virtually anybody in the league, but they're not special enough to go up against the best teams generally and blow them out. Now, Buffalo has no running game, and it worked. Remember how much pushback the Colts got for Carson Wentz? Everybody's hiding now. When they went and spent that money on Carson Wentz, the Colts, Chris Ballard, got dogged by people. Are you all watching Carson Wentz? You take out the 2 Tennessee games, he has been a Pro Bowler. He made a scramble play. He ducked under a Bills pass rush and ran for about 25 yards, first down. They eventually scored. We got to be fair about this stuff. When teams make big moves and it doesn't work, we want the coach fired and the GM canned. The Carson Wentz move for the Colts has been an absolute home run for them. You look at their remaining schedule. You look at how they matched up physically with Buffalo. I said it last week. The Colts and the Vikings, to me, feel like playoff teams in the AFC and the NFC, respectively. They wouldn't make it today, but they're getting really close. You know, Baker Mayfield played really poorly against Detroit, but I'm going to give him a pass here. Torn labrum, bad heel, and let's be honest, he didn't have one of his deep threats. OBJ is now gone. When I think of Baker Mayfield, I've always felt he has this sort of, people love his chutzpah and kind of love his chip on his shoulder. He may have cost himself somewhere between $50 and $100 million over the last couple of weeks playing. I said this 2 months ago when he had to play Justin Herbert, Mac Jones, the Ravens a couple of times, and the Lions. I said, Andrew Berry's going to sit down and they're going to make decisions on Baker Mayfield. He was outrageously inconsistent and bad against Detroit. And I give him a pass because, if you got a bad heel, you're going to overcompensate. You're going to try to, you're not getting able to push off. Torn labrum. He really shouldn't be playing. But when I look at Baker probably would have been best served to not play in the last couple of weeks. But his attitude is, I'm going to show you. He does it at his press conference. He did it to cops in college. He's got a real, I'm going to show you quality to him when he squared up that safety and it ripped up his shoulder. But I think Baker Mayfield has cost himself a fortune playing in these games. I'm not going to rip him. I think he's probably in pain on some of these throws. Heel, torn labrum, recovering shoulder, ribs. Sometimes you're better served to say, you know what? This is what Kyler Murray did. We got a capable backup. Let me get healthy. I think Arizona's going to come back, Kyler Murray off this bye, and they are going to roll people. I don't know if Baker's going to be healthy the rest of the year. And now with injuries adding up, I don't think Cleveland's a playoff team. I think their offense is sort of broken. You get to a point in late November and December, folks, if you don't have momentum over the next couple of weeks, you're not going to fix it because you're not going to have all your people.